So let's take a look at the GVM Great Video Maker 48-inch carbon fiber and motorized slider. Now the carbon fiber portion is the rails. Okay, let's take a look at what's inside the packaging. The first thing you'll see is the controller, the USB cord for the controller, the Sony battery and charger, and the camera cable cords. So here you find the carbon fiber rails, the parallax bars in the middle, here's the base plate, and here's the motor. Now this comes with a whole bunch of cables, so it's compatible with most cameras. It also comes with an extension cable as well. Now let me unpack this and show you in detail. Here's the Sony battery charger, and the battery's underneath that you'll see in a second. Here's the USB cable for the remote that I showed you earlier. Here's the Sony battery. So here's the controller again. It has settings for A and B points, slider speed, time-lapse functions, manual slider controls, and auto slider controls. So you plug the USB cable here and run it to the motor, and here's the place where you plug for power. It has a 1/4-20 mount in the bottom and an on and off switch. Keep in mind that every time you turn off the controller, you have to reset the A and B points. Okay, so here's the manual where you find more information for the time-lapse, setting A and B points, slider speed, time-lapse functions, manual slider controls, and auto slider controls. So you can scan these QR codes if you want more information on how to set the slider up. So on the side is where you find the motor, and you see the gear band here on the side, and also on the bottom you'll find the cheese plate. Now you can use multiple 1/4-20s or 3/4 screws. I recommend using at least 2 and using a longer base plate. So this one is the 48-inch. If you've never used a slider before and you just want the best bang for your buck and you figure, hey, I'll just pay a few more dollars and get a bigger slider, you may be a little bit surprised or maybe even disappointed about how big the slider may be to you. Now, if you're like me and used manual sliders before and you're aware of how the length looks in person, you may not be disappointed at all and it might be exactly what you're looking for. I personally think longer sliders are more geared towards people who use time-lapse. Now also keep this in mind, you don't have to use the full distance of the rail itself. Now with that being said, I personally don't use the time-lapse feature, but I plan to, so I wanted a longer slider to be a little bit more versatile. While it is a little bit longer and may be harder to transport for some people, for me it's not a big deal. I plan on using this more for professional gigs or paid gigs where the size of the equipment really doesn't matter too much. Now if you're a person who likes to travel a bit, take things with you on the go, and be discreet, maybe you're better off with a smaller slider. You'll also notice a 3/4 and 1/4-20 mounting threads on the side. This is if you want to mount the slider vertical. The screws here allow you to adjust the length of the feet on uneven surfaces. So the center red knob here is to adjust the parallax bar. Now there are markings here to help you center it out. So you use this thumb screw right here to lock the base plate. If you don't want the base plate to move, you can also turn on the motor without using it and it'll stay still as well. Now don't forget to loosen that screw up. I've done it a few times, had it tightened and used the motor and you'll hear a clicking or jamming sound. While I don't recommend it, if you wanted to mount your camera directly to the base plate or if you had a smaller tripod head that you can put on there with a 1/4-20 mount, you can simply remove the 3/4 adapter on top by unscrewing it with your finger. Now here's a closer look where you plug in the power and the motor. Now to get started it's pretty simple. Grab the battery, grab the controller, mount the battery, grab the USB cable, pretty much plug it into the remote and then plug it into the motor. Now the controller does have a built-in strap. That is a nice feature and the cable is long enough to hang it from somewhere and use it, but just be very careful as the motorized slider is moving. The last thing you want is the cable to be tangled. So let me just turn this on really quickly and manually move the slider with the controller so you can see how it works. Okay, so let me just show you some behind the scenes of how I quickly set this up. Now I don't want to go into too much of the process in detail as you can find more information on their YouTube page or their direct website. So one thing that I do recommend is getting a good or decent high quality tripod head that can manage the weight that you're putting on that slider. Now the motion that you get with this particular slider in this brand is pretty smooth. It is not absolute smooth where you can't notice any type of micro movements, but it is definitely usable. So the only time where I actually notice the slider where it kind of bothers me a little bit is when it goes back and forth in the automation modes, whether it be parallax or just back and forth. The reason for this is, as far as I know at this current time, there's not a way to adjust how much dampening you prefer at the endpoints when it begins to go to the other side. Now keep in mind, for the price point, it's not that big of a deal, but I just wanted to point that out. So like I said before, I personally don't do a lot of time lapse, or really hardly any at all. But what I will do, since I have the longer slider, is I plan on doing it because it's going to inspire me to want to create more in that direction. Now I will say that it's great that you can control the camera, or at least this particular camera, with the included cables and the controller. Okay, so for me, I wanted it more for reveal type of shots and also for the parallax movements. If you're like myself and used a lot of manual sliders in the past, you'll know how hard it is to get consistent results. This is where a motorized slider comes into play. Now usually motorized sliders are very costly, and even though this is a little pricey to some, it's very affordable if you're talking about getting motorized sliders. So one of the ways they were able to make this more affordable is the parallax function. Now the parallax function usually requires a motor that pans the head itself, and also a motor that goes left and right. Now combine that together and you can get the parallax function without having a bar in the middle like this one has. So the way they avoided that, they just have a motor that goes left and right, and then they have the parallax bar in the middle that you adjust, as I've shown you already. So there's 3 ways to adjust the parallax bar. The first way is to center out each end of the parallax bar to have the traditional left and right movements or forward and back movements. The second way would be to adjust the ends at an angle. This is going to cause a sweeping motion as you go left and right or forward and back. So the third way is how you track or have the parallax effect. Remember, you don't need to use the entire length of the slider, but also keep this in mind. All this plays a part in how much of the slider that you utilize, the lens or focal length that you utilize, and how close or far away you are from the object that you're panning or tracking. So another benefit that I wanted to point out for having a longer slider, besides for time-lapse functions, is that you can lean it on something and kind of have an upwards movement. Now keep in mind that you can still do this with a shorter slider as well. The difference is, the longer the slider, the longer the movement, which makes more sense if you're going up and down, and it can be more versatile depending on what you're trying to film. So there's basically pros and cons to having both a long or short slider. Now you just have to ask yourself, what do you need, or what do you do more of? Because for me, if I had an option, I would have a long and a short slider for different purposes. But if you don't have that option, then you just need to pick the one that you use the most. So let me just give you a quick run through of the remote. Now keep in mind, I'm a type of person who doesn't look at manuals too much, so I base everything off of how easy it is to use right out the box. So let me show you how to do automated settings. Go to settings, hit start. Now here's where you adjust the speed. You have up, down, center, and left and right controls. You want to go up for speed for faster speeds, down for speed for slower speeds. You don't want it to be too slow unless you're doing time-lapse type of functions, because it'll take forever. Now to stop, you just hit the center button. To confirm, hit the center button again. And hold this center button to go to your endpoint now, and do the same process. Now hit the right side, or the opposite side that you started off with. Remember, it's the same function, so whenever you want it to stop, you just go ahead and hit the center button to stop it, and hit the center button again to confirm it. And to get out of the menu, just hold the center button. And basically go to video shoot and go to auto mode. Center button. So here you can choose from auto loop or auto stop. Both of them go to the A and B points. The loop portion is basically, it loops, it goes back and forth. The stop just goes from A to B or B to A. In the loop function, you can also set which side you want to go to first, the direction A or B or B to A. Unfortunately, the only feature that I see missing personally is dampening functions, as at this current time there is no option for that. So let me run through the video time lapse in the controller. Go to settings and time lapse. You have manual or automatic controls. So the manual control setup is just like when you use a slider in normal use. Now let me show you what it looks like when you put it in automatic mode and the options that you have. So their recommended settings for the stop time is to be twice the value of the exposure. For example, if you have the exposure set for 30 seconds, then the stop time should be set for at least 60 seconds. So overall, I give this slider a thumbs up for build quality, price point, and functionality. Now keep in mind, while you're not going to get the absolute smoothest movement, it is definitely usable. And also keep this in mind, if you need absolute perfection, you're looking at a price tag that's at least 4 or 5 times or more than you're getting for this. So at $400 or less, this is a steal. So far I'm pretty happy with this brand in general. GVM, a great video maker, has a nice brand or quality of lights that they sell at affordable rate. They have the slider at affordable rate, and they also have great customer service, and they've helped me out tremendously along the process whenever I had a problem. So I definitely recommend their brand and recommend their products. If this was helpful at all, please hit like and subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification icon to get future updates on future videos, or visit www.howtoandreviews.com. Till next time.